And welcome to Deutsch with Dennis, or as we might say, Liebe Grüße alle euch. That is good greetings to everyone. This is part two of my video, kind of talking mainly about the trip that I'm leading here in July 2025. But if you happen to stumble upon this and just on your travels or anything like that and are interested, that'd be great. So you see, I'm in my studio, as not a whole lot, but you'll be seeing a lot of information here, either at the bottom of the screen or you'll see it here with some words and visuals here off of my shoulder. And so we're basically in this video, we're going to talk about etiquette and some customs that you would have that I think hopefully will make you feel a little more comfortable when you're out and interacting and out and traveling in Germany. So we're going to split this into three parts. Ooh, you see something here. That's going to be what we're going to talk about, because this is how, when you see on the street or in a restaurant, that Germans will count to three. If you've seen the movie Inglourious Bastards, you might know that that kind of goes. And so, for instance, the character who's trying to be a German spy or a spy against Germany uses this, which is the British way to say three. But in Germany, they count with their thumb first. So one, if you want one beer, eins bitte, or one, two, three. Just one of those kind of crazy things. You don't need to. It's not a big deal, but you might get a little snicker here or there if you count one with your finger or two like that. It means something a little bit different. But anyway, we're going to split this into three parts. Our basic greetings and what you will experience along with greetings. What tips you might have for your restaurants when you're out, because what do we enjoy most when we're on vacation or traveling somewhere different? Restaurants. And then just kind of some other out and about customs or things to watch out for when you're traveling. So first, we'll talk through our basic greetings. So how do you say hello? It's always nice when you go into a shop or you may see someone who you make eye contact with or go up and talk with someone to actually be able to kind of maybe greet, even if you only speak just a couple words of German. You don't need to, but it's just good to know, just so you don't automatically go into English, and it just kind of makes the traveling experience a little bit better. So when you say hello, we think of our traditional Guten Tag. Guten Tag. That is good day. And so that can really be used at many times. And then when you split that into, you have Guten Morgen, which means good morning, or Guten Abend, which means your evening when you are there. So Guten Abend is evening, Guten Morgen is in the morning. Now, it's interesting. You have Guten Tag seems kind of formal. We'll say that. And so many regions in Germany have developed their own kind of how do we do it? And so, for instance, if you're in Hamburg, which we will be, you will hear a lot Moin or Moin Moin, which means, hey, what's up? How are you doing? And it's used generally as a greeting like you would Guten Tag, and actually kind of derives from Guten Morgen, and they just have squished it to say Moin Moin. And in other regions, you might have different things, like in Leipzig, Tag just means good day. But you have that little bit of regional variation there. Now, that's the hellos. Again, Guten Tag. You can wave, everything like that. Now, when you say goodbye, now this is an interesting one. If you have learned German in the past, the traditional formal way was Auf Wiedersehen. See you again at some point. But this now is mainly considered that you will have Auf Wiedersehen, but Tschüss is kind of our informal way. So that is Tschüss that we can be able to use on that. You'll hear that a lot of when you are in shops or anything like that. Auf Wiedersehen is another one there. Or you'll also will hear kind of more informally, bis and then something else. Bis means until. So bis bald would mean see you soon. Bis später, see you later. Bis morgen, until tomorrow. So those are some of those things that you would have in just your daily interactions of what you have. Now, when you're out and about, especially in a service industry, think of a restaurant or think of a shop or something like that. I like to say that you tend to have these bitte danke sandwiches, kind of like sir, yes, sir, no, sir type thing that you might have in the military. You have that actually in German because you have some pretty, you have a pretty adaptable word called bitte, which means please. There you go. After you, pardon me. or it also means you're welcome. So if you're in a restaurant, a lot of times if you are served something, the waiter or whoever might say bitte, which means here you go. And then you can be able to respond danke, and then they will say bitte, which means you're welcome. So here you go. You would respond danke, and then bitte comes back, means you're welcome. Bitte also means please. So you add all of those things in, and so you have you have a very common word that you're going to hear a lot. And so that's why I like to say you're going to hear bitte a lot. For please, ein Bier bitte. Ein Bier bitte, which would mean one beer, please. And then when you receive it from the waiter, you will hear bitte, and you can say danke or whatever the case is. And this is where we get into a little bit of how you may be able to say, if you don't feel like saying danke all the time, if you feel like saying you're really, really appreciative, I like to say vielen Dank, which means many thanks. You also have kind of that traditional Dankeschön that we kind of have in our popular culture as well. So Dankeschön, vielen Dank, those are some way that you have with in that ability to communicate with one another. Again, none of these are required, but hopefully it just helps make it a little bit easier when you're out there traveling. Now, one thing that you have, especially with greetings, and you aren't sure on where you're at, let's say you get lost or you need help with something. This is a decent word where you can kind of make eye contact and you say helfen with that little inflection at the end. Helfen, so help, switch it to a F, and then you have the EN at the end. That's the verb ending of it. But helfen is a good way that you can kind of draw attention to yourself, and someone will kind of come for you. So, for instance, if you want to find the bathrooms, you say helfen, and then you can ask one of two things. Wo sind die Toilette? Toilets. Or wo ist der WC? WC. They say. Those would be your German expressions. And so Europeans, unlike Americans, they are not uncomfortable to call a bathroom a toilet. For us, the toilet is the actual toilet. But the toilets mean kind of the bathroom area that you have in Germany. So you'll see oftentimes signs that will say Toiletten with an arrow, or you see WC with an arrow, whatever the case is. So just like any language, it's kind of helpful to know where the restroom is. Those are your two real good options, Toiletten or WC. Again, WC, the W is a V. WC, and then that soft C. So those are those two things. Now, if you are actually looking for which bathroom to use, let's say you're in a restaurant or something like that, they can get a little bit funky, but otherwise you basically are looking at Mann oder Frau, man or woman. You also have Männer, which is the plural, umlaut A-N-N-E-R, right here, and as well as weiblich. Weiblich also means like feminine. And then you also have for boys, Jungs, and girls, Mädchen. Mädchen. So those will be some of those things you might see. And then you also have pictograms that will hopefully help you understand which one is which one. But hopefully that is all kind of one of those things. All right, now moving on to the great part that we have when we're traveling, especially in Germany, which I find so enjoyable, are our restaurant tips, more of the etiquette. So the nice thing is, a restaurant auf Deutsch in German is Restaurant, spelled the exact same. But that is one way that you have here. You also see like Imbiss and some other things, but namely restaurant will be the exact same. So when you go to a restaurant, the etiquette is there are hosts or waiters or whatever the case is. And at many restaurants, even if you want to eat outside and it looks like people are just kind of sitting down, most times they are talking to the host of the restaurant or a waiter, someone that works at the restaurant. And basically you can say, hey, yeah, do you have any seats free? Do you have anything available? Because there are restaurants where they have reservations, just like anywhere else. So even if it looks like there's plenty of spaces, sometimes they have various reservations. So it's always nice to just ask. And if you'd like to know if they have an English menu available, you can always ask Karte auf Englisch, or you can just kind of say English. That is a good way. Karte is, it's either map or menu. Speisekarte is the actual name, but you can just shorten it to Karte. So if you think about that, Karte is going to be one of those things you're going to hear a lot because you also use that for credit cards. But it is one of those things that you have there on that. So that is how you do it. I already alluded to, if you're interested in like counting or anything like that, you'll often see 1, 2, 3. So if you want 2 beers, you can do 1, 2, like your Texas Tech Red Raider. But you can do one of those things. But then that is how that works there. And you put mal at the end. So if it's like 2 times, you say zweimal, zweimal. 3 times, dreimal, und so weiter. Und so weiter means and so on and so on. Okay, one of the etiquette and culture that you're going to expect when you come into a restaurant, they're different from what we have in the United States. Now, water is not automatically served. Like if you go to most restaurants, you're automatically going to get a water. Sometimes now you have to ask for it, but generally you get water. That's not necessarily the case in Germany. And here's the important thing, you've probably heard about that. Most water, at least traditionally, is carbonated or mineral water or water mit Gas. Gas is like the bubbles. Think about that. Gas has some extra energy. That's what carbonated water is, mit Gas. And most times, especially if they know that you're American, they will ask, do you want natural water or still water? That would be more what we would be used to drinking. Not necessarily tap water, but stilles Wasser is what you have that doesn't have that carbonation in there. Also with water, and then also with soda, don't really come with ice. Soda or pop, they don't come with ice, and you don't necessarily have free refills. So normally you go to a restaurant here, okay, I'll take a Pepsi. They get it off the gun. You get the Pepsi, and then you can have as many Pepsis as you want. Not the case in Germany. You'd have to pay for each drink that you get. And when you have drinks, whether it is a pop or beer or wine or anything, they are divided by their amount. You will see the amounts all the time. So they're by liters. And what's interesting is that instead of the period, so instead of 0.5 liters, which would be our normal standard pint size, it's going to be 0.5. It's the same thing. They just switched the comma and the period in Germany. So that comma is actually that end point after 0. So just a reminder, again, the half or 0.5 is a normal pint size that you normally would order for like a large beer. 0.3 is generally your 12 ounce. So you think of those different things when you order a 12 ounce, or if you have a 12 ounce can, it'll say 0.328 liters or something like that, or 328 milliliters. Those are those conversions that you would have there. Now, wine is just a little bit differently. You'll often be asked, hey, if I liked a glass of Rotwein, red wine, or the Weißwein, it usually is going to come in either an Achtel or a Viertel. Achtel means 1/8, and Viertel means 1/4. Those two distinguishing things, and generally if you get an Achtel, that's generally one glass of wine that you would normally have. And then a Viertel would be a couple glasses. So it's not quite the full bottle, but it would be a Viertel, 1/4 liter, which generally will come in a carafe for you to pour extra stuff on. So those are just things to kind of know where you have there. Speaking of drinks, whether it is pop, beer, liquor, wine, whatever the case is, toasting. We have this a lot. And if you've seen any memes on German culture, this is one that kind of is important. You have generally 2 words, Prost, Prost, P-R-O-S-T. That is Bavarian, and what you will hear in many Oktoberfests. It is somewhat common, and I would say Prost even in Northern Germany. But the traditional way in Northern Germany would be Zum Wohl, to life, basically. Here's for good life. Wohl doesn't mean life, but that's just a good translation of it. Now, the main cultural thing is that you're always to keep eye contact with one another. Eye contact. That is kind of what's critical. So if you have a group of, let's say, 6 people and you toast one another, you are to look in one another's eyes as you toast to that various person, not just in the middle where you're clinking glasses. So that's just one of those things that's kind of fun if you were to sit down, have a good conversation with a German, honor them by looking them in the eyes when you say Prost or Zum Wohl. That is a good way to look at it there. All right. Now, here we're coming into some of that money thing that gets a little bit challenging at times for us. And this is when we receive the bill. So, German waiters are generally not going to be checking in on you every time. You can kind of hail them if you want something else. Say, we'll check in and say, do you need anything else or whatnot? But it's not going to be that constant, hey, how's everything taste after one bite? It is going to be, they might check in and see how you're doing if you need anything else, especially if it looks like your glass may be empty or anything like that. But generally, you can be able to look at a waiter, maybe hail them with a little nod, a little wave, whatever the case is, and then what you would normally say when you want to pay the bill, you can say a couple things, but generally you're going to say this: bezahlen bitte, bezahlen bitte. Again, that's a hard Z on that attack, or you can just say zahlen. So again, right there. It's not a soft Z, it is a but zahlen is the actual word, but sometimes you can just say zahlen. Zahlen bitte. A bill is also called die Rechnung, but generally you just can say bezahlen. All right, so here's where it gets a little bit different. Tips aren't expected, but if you want to, generally you would round up. So some examples I have is, let's say your bill is 38,40 euros. Okay, I might say, okay, 40. That's good. That rounds up to a nice even amount so that when I get change back, that's what it is. Or sometimes if it's like 35.10 and you're like, oh, okay, that's okay. Maybe 36, because again, that is going to be what makes sense on what it is. So if you give some money, the waiters will have their Bitcoin purse and they will supply you change most times automatically. However, if what you pay, let's say that is 40. Hey, I have 40 euros right here. I'm going to pay that. You can say stimmt. Stimmt. That means it's fine. They won't give you any change back. All right. That's a good way to do that. Or you can say it's good if they're speaking English with you or whatever the case is. No change, something like that. You can also say, let's say if you have a 50, but you want to have that 40, you can say what you would normally say instead of saying, give me 10 back, you would say 40 or 40. That would say what you want to actually pay with the tip included, which then means if you give a 50 euro bill, you will get 10 euros back. And that includes everything. So you actually would say what that amount that you are wanting to give to cover the bill and any additional tip or roundup that you would have. So again, you have stimmt and you have the number that you are wanting to pay for that bill. But generally, enjoy, ask the waiters questions, ask what they would recommend, some other options. It is great to get to know them. I think they will enjoy most times, unless it's really busy, talking with you and seeing how things are going. This is where you're going to see a lot of friendliness, I would think, throughout your experience. So hopefully you'll be able to enjoy that. Now, kind of bringing it all together for when we are out and about. So I've talked a little bit about the currency. Again, euro is the currency. Now, they have a lot more money. We'll say that a lot more different denominations of money. So, for instance, your coin, your Münze, are split into 2 copper pennies, a 1 or a 2-cent copper penny. Most things generally don't get that unless you go to a grocery store. You won't have a lot of pennies broken down into. But then you also have a 5-cent, 10-cent, 20-cent, 30-cent, 50-cent, and then you have a €1 and €2 coins that are very, very common. So you actually will receive a lot of those. Now, if you go into a shop and you buy something, let's say you're just getting a deli sandwich or something like that. Generally, there's a little tray on the top of the counter that they will put that change back on. So if you give a 10 and it's only 6, so they're giving you two euro coins back, they will put those 2 euro coins on this little tray on top of the counter. Just one of those things that I don't want you to be too scared of when you get that. Sales tax, they do have tax, but it's included in the price. There's no rounding up to 6 or 7% or anything like that. What you see is what you will pay. With the only exception that I'm really aware of would be when you have, if you're going to the grocery store and getting, or anywhere else and you want to get a bottle of pop or a bottle of wine or beer, then they will have fond on top of that. That is deposit. But generally what you pay is what you see is what you pay. So you don't have that extra guessing of how much more you have to put on top of that. Now, here's when we're out and about. Watch out. Bicycles are much more common in Germany and Europe in general than what we see in the United States. But even when you have Fußgängerzone, which means pedestrian walkway, you still have to watch out for bikes that are coming through. So even if you're walking down looks like a nice boulevard, just be aware of where you're at and keep your eye out for bikes. They will ring a bell, but it's always good to know where you are there. If you happen to be crossing a street that has a street light, watch out for the green Ampelmann. That is when you cross. And as you also may have memes, you really shouldn't cross in Germany when you come to one of those unless that Ampelmann is green. So even if it looks like it's clear, you might cross, but you will probably get maybe a schimpfen from some of the Germans if you're around there. So it's just kind of polite to wait at a crosswalk until that Ampelmann turns green. And then when you're out and about, just a reminder that they label the floors as 0 as the ground floor, and then either a minus or a plus. So floor one is actually what we would consider the second floor. So you'll see that in many elevators at ground 0 or EG, Erdgeschoss. That is the ground floor. That is your base floor, and then you go up from there to 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever the case is. So those are a little bit of those etiquettes that are out there. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I'll try and check those out. But it is just a great time. So, bitte, there you go. Hopefully you are able to enjoy this. Und vielen Dank für deine Aufmerksamkeit. Thank you for your attention. And for those of you going on this trip that I'm leading, thank you for putting yourself out there. I am so excited. And as we like to say, bitte, or bis bald.